Imagine waking up tomorrow morning, right, and you drive to this factory you've owned for like 20 years.
Yeah, the one you literally poured your life into.
Exactly. You walk onto the floor and you know every single inch of this place. I mean, you know the exact grinding sound the belt makes on that second loom.
You probably know the names of all 55 of your employees, too.
Right. You have this comfortable, predictable existence in a middle-tier economy. You know your local market, and they know you. It feels totally safe.
A nice, stable bubble.
Yeah. But then today, you walk into your office, you open the newspaper, and the world has just ended.
Oh, wow.
Overnight, the protective walls around your entire country have been bulldozed. You are suddenly, without any warning at all, dragged into the Premier League of global competition.
The borders are just wide open now.
Wide open. A shipment from a developing nation just arrived at the port, and they are selling the exact same product you make, but for like $4.
And you probably can't even buy the raw materials for $4.
No way. It's impossible. And meanwhile, from the other direction, a high-speed train just rolled in from Germany carrying this premium space-age version of your product.
Right, the one that costs $50 and has a billion-dollar marketing budget behind it.
Exactly. Backed by a century of luxury branding, so your old advantages are just instantly gone.
Just completely wiped out.
Yeah, your market is totally exposed. You are trapped in the middle staring at your 55 employees. So the question for you, the listener, is what is your very first move? Do you thrive, or do you just get absolutely annihilated?
I mean, it is a terrifying scenario. It's basically the ultimate nightmare for anyone running a business, or honestly, anyone just managing their own career.
It really is.
The rules of the game completely change while you were still playing it. And suddenly the survival instincts that kept you alive for decades are the exact things that will drag you under.
And that is exactly what we are deep diving into today. We are looking at this deeply fascinating, incredibly data-rich study that documents exactly this kind of bloodbath.
Yeah, the researchers here are Spanos, Zaralis, and Lioukas, and what they put together isn't just some casual survey.
No, it's an absolute goldmine of data.
Right. It's a rigorous full census of literally 1,921 Greek manufacturing enterprises. They captured everything.
And the timeline is the most critical part here, right? We're talking 1995 to 1996.
Exactly. Because to really grasp the stakes here, you have to picture the macroeconomic pressure cooker of Greece in the mid-90s.
It wasn't just a normal business cycle.
Not at all. They were on the precipice of a massive, forced, historical transformation. The entire country was desperately trying to restructure its economy to qualify for the Eurozone.
Right, so for Greek manufacturing, this is literally a life or death exam. They were stepping into this arena with foreign titans who had resources they couldn't even fathom.
And a few of these local companies actually figured out a secret code and rose to the occasion.
But the vast majority of them, they were absolute cannon fodder.
Complete wipeout.
So our mission for this deep dive is to extract the ultimate survival guide for the underdog, the catch-up competitor. Because the data in this study tells a story that completely shatters conventional wisdom.
It gives classic business advice a massive slap in the face.
Yes. We are going to uncover why the most obedient companies, I mean the ones that read the classic management textbooks and followed the rules perfectly, why they were the very first to die.
And we'll reveal the completely counterintuitive, frankly unglamorous strategies that actually generated hard cash for the survivors.
Okay, let's unpack this, because it's a fascinating autopsy of thousands of businesses that made the wrong move. But we have to start by looking at the agonizing physical reality of these manufacturers on the ground.
Yeah, when we call them underdogs, we need to be highly specific. Do you remember the average size of a Greek manufacturing plant in this census?
Yeah, it was just 55 employees.
55. That is incredibly small for industrial manufacturing.
I mean, that's barely a medium-sized office, let alone a factory taking on the globe.
Right, it was actually the smallest average firm size in the entire European Union at the time. You have these tiny operations, highly fragmented, often family-run for generations.
And they wake up to find themselves completely stripped of their historical security blankets, what we call the double squeeze.
The double squeeze is brutal because historically, didn't Greek manufacturers rely on cheap labor? That was their entire safety net in the European ecosystem.
Yeah, they were like the low-cost producer for the continent, so you'd think, why couldn't they just keep playing the price game?
Because the geopolitical map completely flipped on them.
Hmm.
I mean, the Iron Curtain had fallen, the Asian tiger economies were absolutely roaring, globalization accelerated at a terrifying pace.
So suddenly that historical labor advantage just vanished.
Poof, gone overnight. Emerging markets in Eastern Europe and Asia could undercut Greek labor costs every single day of the week. That's the bottom half of the squeeze.
So from below, they're being cannibalized by insanely cheap goods flooding the market. The floor just falls completely out from under them.
Right. And what's happening from above is just as bad.
The border's opening up, right?
Yeah, they're being battered by newly opened borders, allowing premium, high-tech, deeply established European brands from places like Germany and France to just flood in.
And these foreign companies have massive economies of scale.
Huge. Colossal R&D budgets and like decades of locked-in brand loyalty.
So they're completely trapped. I mean, they can't win on premium quality because they don't have the tech or the brand heritage. And they can't win on price anymore because there is always some developing nation that can do it cheaper.
It's the worst place to be.
But if you open up a classic management textbook, like the kind they teach in literally every MBA program on earth, they preach a very clear gospel for this situation.
They tell you there are two singular, pure paths to survival. You must choose one.
Right. Either become the absolute lowest cost provider in your market or differentiate yourself completely through superior technology and premium branding.
Yeah, the gospel of pure strategy. Pick a lane and commit all your resources to it. That's what the experts say.
But the slap-in-the-face reality of this census data is that this single-minded obsession actually killed them.
It was lethal.
Why did the companies that fought the hardest to either slash costs to the bone or heavily fund R&D end up dying the fastest? Wait, so you're telling me that doing exactly what the Harvard Business Review would tell you to do was basically a suicide pact for these companies?
In this specific context, absolutely. It was a death sentence.
Yeah.
When you are a tiny player squeezed from both sides, purity and strategy is just completely toxic.
Walk me through that. Let's look at the mechanism behind the pure low-cost strategy first.
Okay, so if you try to be the absolute cheapest, you are fighting a race to the bottom against economies that have fundamentally lower living standards than you.
Right. Weaker labor laws, drastically lower wage expectations.
Exactly. You cannot physically win that race without literally starving your workforce. It's a mathematical impossibility.
It's like you're just holding your breath, waiting to see who passes out first, and it's definitely going to be you.
Yeah, your margins just shrink until you suffocate. But the other pure path, the high-tech premium route, is arguably even worse.
Really? Why? Wouldn't innovating your way out of the bottom tier be the most logical move to escape the cheap imports?
In theory, sure. But in reality, because of the friction of reality, if a 55-person company suddenly tries to play the pure differentiation game against a massive multinational conglomerate, they just bleed out in months.
They try to spend money they don't have.
Right. They blow cash on R&D and marketing, trying to invent groundbreaking tech from scratch to create this premium product. But they lack the historical organizational resources.
They don't have the deep pockets to survive the failure cycles of R&D.
Exactly. Okay, so pure strategy killed them.
But I have to push back here for a second.
Right.
Surely a company making low-margin textiles or like simple machine parts in a hyper-crowded market is going to die regardless of their microstrategy, right?
You mean like their fate is sealed by their industry?
Yeah, doesn't the industry itself dictate who survives? Like if you are in a terrible sunset industry, you're doomed. If you're in a great protected monopoly industry, you're safe.
So that is the exact assumption that dominated economic theory for decades. It's known as the Structure Conduct Performance Paradigm, or SCP.
Okay, the SCP model.
It essentially argues that your destiny is dictated by your industry structure. If you manage to position yourself in a highly concentrated monopolistic industry where there are only a few big players, you can basically just lay back.
The theory says the structure protects you from competition, allowing you to keep prices high and literally print money.
Right, it's the monopoly myth. It sounds incredibly logical on paper. Find a quiet, uncrowded room, lock the door, and hide from the bloodbath outside.
But the real-world data gives that a massive reality check, right?
A huge one. The researchers ran the numbers on this. They wanted to see if simply being in a highly concentrated industry actually protected these Greek firms.
And economists measure this concentration using something called the Herfindahl Index.
Exactly. And when they mapped that index against actual profit margins, the impact was statistically completely insignificant.
Wait, Statistically completely insignificant. Let's translate that for the listener.
It means the data gave that theory a ringing slap in the face.
The idea that you can escape brutal competition just by hiding in a concentrated industry is pure fantasy. It doesn't matter if there are 2 players in your space or 200.
If you act like a monopoly and get lazy, the market will find a way to kill you. It forces a massive paradigm shift.
Because if the industry you are in dictates your destiny, why do 2 companies in the exact same sunset industry have completely opposite bank accounts?
And that's the perfect question. Like 2 rival olive oil bottling plants on the exact same street. Why is one drowning and the other building a yacht?
Because of what their researchers found in their variance breakdown. We can call this the golden 2x rule.
The golden 2x rule. They isolated all the variables to see what was actually driving the differences in profitability between these almost 2,000 firms.
And the objective structural industry factors, things like concentration or the overall growth rate of the sector, they only explained 6.7% of the variations in profit.
Only 6.7%. That is a tiny slice of the pie.
But the micro-level strategy of the individual firms, the specific day-to-day choices the managers made on the factory floor, that explained 15% of the variance.
Wow.
Right. That is a phenomenal takeaway for anyone listening to this. What it means is that your industry only sets your floor. Your personal strategy dictates your ceiling.
Strategy is more than twice as powerful as your zip code.
Yes. You can be in a terrible, shrinking, hyper-competitive industry. And if your micro-strategy is right, you can still pull out massive profits.
And conversely, you can be in a booming, highly concentrated industry and still go bankrupt if you make the wrong strategic moves.
Strategy is the ultimate weapon. It is the invisible hand that actually determines your ceiling, not the macroeconomic weather. You aren't a victim of your industry.
I love that. But it brings us right back to our central conflict. Strategy is the ultimate weapon, but we already established that the classic textbook strategies failed miserably.
Right, so what actually works? Let's look at the biggest sacred cow this data slaughters. We have to talk about Michael Porter.
Oh yeah, Michael Porter. He is arguably the most famous strategy academic in history. His competitive strategy framework is taught to literally every MBA student on earth.
And Porter famously warned that a firm must make a hard choice right. Either you pursue low cost or you pursue differentiation, the famous either or.
Yes, and his starkest warning was about mixing the two.
The death zone.
Exactly. He warned that if you try to do both, if you try to be cheap but also premium, you will end up stuck in the middle. You won't be cheap enough to beat the pure discounters, and you won't be premium enough to beat the true luxury brands.
You will have no distinctive competitive advantage and you will die. That's the global iron law.
But the Greek census data completely turns this upside down. It shows that Porter's iron law actually became a toxic bait for these ketchup companies.
It's crazy. Let's look at the numbers for the companies that try to be purely differentiated. We're talking about the elegant suicide.
The numbers are absolutely devastating. When the researchers ran the regression analysis, they found that a pure marketing strategy where a firm scored high on advertising but low on cost efficiency in tech end, it had a profit coefficient of negative 0.153.
Okay, we need to pause and explain exactly what that number means in reality.
Good idea.
In statistics, a positive coefficient means that when you do more of a certain behavior, your profit goes up, but a coefficient of negative 0.153.
It means for every extra dollar they pumped into this pure marketing strategy, their profit didn't just stall, it actively plummeted.
They were actively destroying their own value.
And the pure technology strategy scoring high on tech investment, but low on everything else was just as bad. It had a coefficient of negative 0.139.
Wow. So blindly pursuing high-end R&D or flashy brand marketing without a solid foundation was basically an elegant way to commit financial suicide.
Yeah, it really was.
I think of it like a minor league baseball player who is barely batting 200. He takes his entire tiny paycheck and blows it on custom imported designer bats and $500 cleats, thinking it'll make him hit like a major leaguer.
But he still doesn't have the fundamental swing.
Exactly. He hasn't put in the cage time, so he still strikes out, but now he just does it looking incredibly flashy, and he ends up completely bankrupt.
That is the exact mechanism of failure here, because it all goes back to organizational resources. Why does premium fail so spectacularly for the underdog?
They just don't have the history right.
Right. These 55-person Greek firms didn't have the historical DNA to just invent groundbreaking technology out of thin air.
Yeah.
They didn't have the massive marketing war chests required to convince the world that their local brand was suddenly on par with a 100-year-old German engineering firm.
And we can't forget the consumer in this equation. The consumers aren't stupid.
Not at all. The consumers in Greece during the mid-90s were perfectly aware of the difference between a truly premium imported brand and a local brand trying to put on airs.
They simply didn't trust a premium label from a local underdog. It felt completely inauthentic.
So the firms spent all this cash trying to look wealthy, and it drained their tiny cash flows instantly, while the market just rejected them.
This is where my brain starts to hurt a little bit. If pure R&D is an elegant suicide and pure low cost is a dead-end race to the bottom against emerging markets, how on earth did anyone survive this bloodbath?
Well, in a fractured tearing world, you have to learn to walk on two legs at the exact same time, even if all the experts tell you those legs want to walk in opposite directions.
You have to break the rules.
Yes. The only way to break the dilemma was the exact thing Michael Porter explicitly warned against, the hybrid strategy, simultaneously fighting for low cost and differentiation.
The forbidden zone.
Exactly. The researchers mapped out 27 different possible strategy combinations, and they found that the firms operating in this hybrid golden zone were consistently the highest performers.
You know, breaking the academic rules and making cold, hard cash doing it.
And out of all those 27 combinations, there was one that stood out head and shoulders above the rest, the perfect match.
I absolutely love this because the most lucrative survival method sounds incredibly unglamorous. It's what I call the cheap and loud strategy.
The data revealed that the most profitable strategy combination in the entire study was low cost plus advertising. The profit coefficient for this specific hybrid strategy was a massive positive 0.152.
That is huge. Let's contextualize that swing for the listener.
Yeah, think about the contrast.
A pure marketing strategy was negative 0.153. But if you combine that exact same marketing with a ruthless, low-cost foundation, it flips the entire reality of the business to a positive 0.152. It's the equivalent of finding a cheat code.
It is a profound shift.
So what does cheap and loud look like in practice? It means you scrape the absolute bottom of the barrel on costs. You are insanely efficient, maybe even ruthless on your factory floor. You optimize every single supply chain detail.
But then you take the money you saved and you spend it shouting from the rooftops with high-end marketing.
You create the illusion of a premium foreign tier brand through aggressive advertising. But behind the scenes, your machinery is bare bones and highly calculated.
Think about modern brands like Zara or IKEA.
Oh, perfect examples.
They have incredibly optimized, ruthless, low-cost supply chains. But look at their marketing. It's glossy, it's high fashion. It looks like a premium European lifestyle.
They are the ultimate modern manifestation of cheap and loud.
It sounds almost cynical when you phrase it as an illusion, but from an evolutionary standpoint, it is a brilliantly adapted survival mechanism.
And to understand why it works so perfectly for these Greek manufacturers, we have to look deeply into the psychology of the consumer in that specific market at that exact moment in time.
We can call it the 50% wallet pain.
The 50% wallet pain. I want to spend some time here because this connects the sterile corporate strategy directly to the anxiety of the actual person walking into a store.
Right. Put yourself in the shoes of the average Greek consumer in 1996. They are going through a massive cultural shift.
The borders are opening up, right?
Yeah, the internet is beginning to emerge, and they're watching the exact same media, the exact same movies and commercials as the rest of Western Europe.
So their lifestyle desires, their tastes, their aspirations, they are fully European. They want the good life. They want the premium aesthetic.
But statistically, the average per capita disposable income in Greece at that time was only 50% of the European Union average.
Oh man, that is a brutal psychological tension. Your eyes are looking at premium. Your taste level is high, but your wallet is stuck firmly in the middle tier.
Exactly. So as a business owner, how do you conquer a consumer whose desires are massively inflated, but whose wallet is practically empty?
I mean, they won't pay for true premium no matter how much they want it because they literally cannot afford the price tag.
Right. But at the same time, their pride is too high. Their tastes are too elevated to buy bottom-tier unbranded trash from a bargain bin.
They want to feel dignified.
Precisely. And this is exactly why the cheap and loud strategy, which we can also frame as value for money, was a surgical strike on that exact psychological pain point.
Because by keeping their operational costs incredibly low, these firms could offer a retail price point that the middle-class Greek consumer could actually afford without going into debt.
But by heavily investing in glossy aspirational advertising, they elevated the perceived status of the product.
They gave the consumer permission to buy it.
Exactly. The consumer didn't feel like they were compromising their European aspirations. They felt like they were making a savvy, stylish choice.
It's brilliant. You are selling them their own dignity at a discount.
That's a great way to put it.
But hold on, I need to challenge this a bit. If this hybrid strategy is the holy grail, you might think you can just mix and match any two things and win. Like if I just do a little bit of X and a little bit of Y, I'm a hybrid ring.
Well, the study shows there's a massive catch. If you build this hybrid house of cards wrong, the whole thing collapses instantly.
Because not all hybrids are created equal, the study found a very clear, unforgiving rule. Brand upgrading without a ruthless foundation of efficiency is just corporate LRRPing.
Corporate LRPing, live action role playing.
Yeah, you're pretending to be a premium company wearing the costume, but you don't have the actual stats to back it up.
Exactly. It's building castles in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
This brings us to what we call the eternal anchor. Low cost is the eternal anchor.
The eternal anchor.
The data clearly shows that if you try a hybrid strategy that does not include low cost as one of its core pillars, your profits completely vanish.
Give me an example of a failed hybrid.
Sure. Let's say you try a dual differentiation strategy. You combine heavy glossy marketing with high-level technological innovation, but you completely ignore your cost structure.
So you let your factory floor get bloated and inefficient because you're so focused on being fancy.
Right. The researchers found that the profit coefficient for that specific hybrid was statistically insignificant. It completely failed.
So no matter how multidimensional your strategy gets, no matter how much you try to modernize, innovate, or rebrand, ruthless cost efficiency must remain your permanent ballast.
It's the heavy lead weight at the bottom of the ship.
If you lose your grip on costs, the ship flips over in the wind and you drown?
You have to remember where these Greek firms came from. Low cost was their historical DNA. It was the only real, tangible advantage they ever possessed in the global market.
The successful firms were the ones that realized they couldn't just abandon their DNA, they had to build on top of it.
They used cost efficiency as the bedrock, the unshakable foundation, and then layered marketing or technology over it.
Which brings us to perhaps the most mind-bending, counterintuitive finding in the entire study. We need to talk about the triumph of the mediocre.
Oh, this is my favorite part.
If you're listening to this and you're a mid-level manager, this is going to completely fly in the face of what your HR department tells you about finding your superpower. Let's revisit Michael Porter's ultimate insult, being stuck in the middle.
Right, Porter said this was a recipe for disaster. The absolute worst place you could possibly be.
Having no distinctive emphasis. Not being particularly cheap, not being particularly innovative, not having a great brand.
Just being aggressively average at everything.
But the data slap here is monumental. The study isolated the firms classified as strictly stuck in the middle. These were the companies with only average emphasis on cost, average emphasis on tech, and average emphasis on marketing.
They didn't excel at a single thing.
And yet the data showed they actually generated a significantly positive profit margin. The coefficient was positive 0.041.
It's a remarkable irony. Being a mediocre jack of all trades was actually vastly superior to being a master of pure differentiation.
But wait, that feels wrong on like a spiritual level. We are constantly conditioned by society, by business books, by motivational speakers to celebrate excellence and specialization. Find your niche. Be the best in the world at one thing.
It's what we're all taught.
Are you telling me that as an underdog, I should actively strive for mediocrity across the board?
I completely understand why it feels wrong. But you have to stop thinking about it like an Olympic gymnast trying to win a gold medal and start thinking about it like an evolutionary biologist looking at a species trying to survive a mass extinction event.
Okay, unpack that for me.
When the environment is incredibly turbulent and you are being attacked from multiple unpredictable directions, over-specialization is a massive vulnerability.
Think about an animal that has evolved to eat only one specific type of leaf.
Exactly. If a disease wipes out that leaf, the animal goes extinct immediately. But the raccoon, which is just average at hunting, average at climbing, and will eat literally garbage, the raccoon survives everywhere.
So the stuck-in-the-middle strategy is essentially a strategy of balanced survival.
Balanced survival versus unbalanced fragility. Yes.
When you are the underdog, being averagely good at everything keeps you alive longer than gambling your entire existence on a single aristocratic trait that you don't really have the resources to sustain.
It's a defensive posture. You aren't winning any industry awards for innovation. You aren't going to be on the cover of Forbes, but you are surviving the winter.
And in a catch-up economy, survival is the absolute prerequisite for future success.
Exactly. You can't win if you're dead.
That is profound. Okay, so we've cracked the code on what you can control. The micro-strategies, the hybrid golden zone of cheap and loud, the eternal anchor of low costs, the raccoon-like survival of being stuck in the middle.
But what about the invisible forces? What happens when we zoom out and look at the passage of time?
Because this study didn't just look at a static snapshot, it looked at how these firms move through time.
And this is where we get into the concept of unseen moats and the massive gravity of history.
Does your hustle today actually have the power to break the gravity of yesterday? Or has history already written your fate? Let's start with the unseen moats, what the researchers call industry umbrellas.
Earlier, we debunked the myth that simply being in a highly concentrated industry saves you. Concentration didn't matter. But the study did find that certain industry-wide behaviors provided massive protection to everyone inside them.
Right, so what are these umbrellas?
The two biggest ones were industry-wide advertising intensity, which had a huge coefficient of positive 10.006.
Whoa, 10!
Yeah, and industry-wide cost efficiency at positive 0.005.
Those numbers are massive compared to the individual strategy numbers we were looking at earlier. But what does that actually mean on the ground? How does an industry advertising intensity protect a single firm?
It's all about barriers to entry. It means that if you happen to be inside an industry where everybody is spending heavily on advertising, or where the industry as a whole is highly mechanized and incredibly cost efficient, the collective behavior creates a structural moat around the entire sector.
Oh, I see. It's like moving into a neighborhood where every single house has spent $50,000 on state-of-the-art security systems, guard dogs, and floodlights.
Right.
Even if your specific house forgets to lock the back door one night, burglars are still going to avoid the neighborhood entirely because the collective barrier to entry is just too high.
That is a perfect analogy. If the price of entry into your industry requires a massive national television ad budget just to even be noticed by a consumer, new competitors are going to think twice before attacking you.
Potential entrants look at the market, see the massive barriers, realize how much capital they would have to burn just to get a seat at the table, and they walk away.
That structural moat protects the incumbents' margins from being slaughtered by new players. You are shielded by the collective high walls of your industry.
But the most staggering data point in the entire study has nothing to do with current strategy or current industry structure. It has to do with ghosts, the gravity of history.
The researchers wanted to see what happens when you account for momentum. So they ran a second extended mathematical model.
Okay.
They took all the variables for strategy and industry umbrellas, and they added one more thing: lagged profits.
Lagged profits, meaning they factored in exactly how profitable each firm was in the previous year.
Exactly.
And what happened.
The explanatory power of the model, what statisticians call the R-squared, absolutely skyrocketed.
Let's explain R-squared quickly. I always think of it as like a pie chart of blame or credit. It tells you what percentage of the result can be explained by the things you are actually measuring.
That's right. Before they added past profits, the model could explain 23.4% of why a company was profitable.
Right.
But when they added the previous year's profit, it jumped to 52.5%.
Wow, so it more than doubled.
Past performance basically swallowed all the short-term strategy variables whole. The coefficient for past profit was an overwhelming 0.698.
Wait, so more than half of your success today is just how successful you were yesterday?
Essentially, yeah.
That sounds incredibly depressing. If I'm struggling today, it's just because I struggled yesterday. Why does past profit matter so much? It's not just a number on a spreadsheet, right?
No, it represents something much deeper. It represents the compound interest of hidden skills.
Yeah.
In economics, profit is the ultimate proxy for what we call unobservable capabilities.
Unobservable capability.
Think about it. You can't put a neat number on a company's internal culture. You can't quantify the grit and resilience of the founder.
Right. You can't put a metric on the tacit knowledge of a management team that has worked together for 20 years. Or the deep handshake relationships they have with their local suppliers.
Exactly. Those things don't show up on a balance sheet as a line item asset. But those hidden, unobservable things, are the exact engines that generate profit.
And that profit, in turn, buys you the breathing room to execute complex hybrid strategies next year.
Yes, if you are highly profitable today, you have the cash buffer to experiment. You can afford to invest in that new glossy marketing campaign while keeping your factory floor running efficiently.
If you make a mistake, you don't go bankrupt. You just have a slightly less profitable quarter.
The rich get richer because they have built a relentless capability flywheel. High profits build hidden skills, which generate more profits, which allow you to build more skills.
Which brings us to a really painful truth for anyone trying to turn a sinking ship around. We need to talk about the 30% adjustment rule.
This is where reality hits really hard.
Let's be honest. Everyone in modern business loves shouting about agile pivots and rapid transformation. We act like you can just have a weekend executive retreat, write a new mission statement, hire a new branding agency, and on Monday you are a totally different, highly profitable hybrid company.
The math is profoundly aggressively unforgiving on this point. Using a partial adjustment model, the researchers calculated how fast these firms could actually move toward their desired target profit levels.
And what was the number?
The rate of adjustment was exactly 30.2% per year.
I want to make sure I understand the mechanism here. Why only 30%? What is physically stopping them from changing faster?
It is the friction of reality. Imagine you decide today that you want to pivot to a low-cost, high-efficiency model. Okay, great. But you have locked-in union contracts that prevent you from changing shift structures.
You have aging machinery on the floor that takes 18 months to order and replace.
You have mid-level managers who have done things a certain way for 15 years and actively, quietly resist your new directives.
You have suppliers tied into multi-year agreements.
So whatever gap exists between where you are and where you want to be, you can only realistically close about 30% of it in a given 12-month period.
True strategic transformation isn't a flashy overnight pivot. It is a grinding, torturous, agonizingly slow adjustment against the weight of your own history.
It demands immense patience. You can't just flip a switch to become a hybrid competitor. You have to build the muscle memory over years.
That is deeply humbling. It basically says you can read all the strategy books in the world, you can listen to this deep dive, you can identify the perfect, cheap and loud hybrid strategy, but if your company culture was built poorly 3 years ago, you are paying that massive tax today.
And you can only fix it 30% at a time.
Your hustle today is fighting against the massive gravity of your past decisions.
Yes, but it also means that if you start making the right micro-strategic choices today, by next year, you will have a 30% tailwind pushing you forward.
Okay, so we've covered incredible ground here. From the double squeeze to the monopoly myth, the failure of pure differentiation, the brilliance of value for money, and the heavy gravity of history.
It's a lot to take in.
So what are the ultimate takeaways from this deep dive? Let's start at the macro level. What does this mean for governments and policymakers who are trying to manage an economy?
It's a massive wake-up call for policy, especially in developing or middle-tier economies. Governments love to throw billions of dollars at trying to build a high-tech sector from scratch.
They want the international prestige of having their own Silicon Valley right.
Exactly. So they subsidize pure technology differentiation, throwing grants at startups that have no foundational business skills.
But this study says that's completely backwards.
Utterly backwards. Throwing money at fancy, highly concentrated industries is mostly a waste of taxpayer funds if your firms don't have the micro-level efficiency and the operational grit to survive.
The data proved that strategy explains twice as much variance as the industry you pick. So the policy shouldn't be about picking high-tech winners. It should be about nurturing hybrid efficiency.
So instead of giving a company $1 million to invent a new microchip, what should they do? Help small firms modernize their basic equipment so they can maintain their low-cost anchor? Provide training on operational efficiency.
And then teach them how to market themselves effectively to the world.
Exactly. Stop trying to build pure differentiators out of thin air and start building resilient, hardened hybrids. Fund the capability, not the category.
That is powerful. But what about for you, the listener? Let's bring this all the way home and connect 1996 Greece to your reality right now in 2026.
It's highly relevant today.
Because I look at this data and I don't just see a history lesson. I see history actively repeating itself. Today, small and medium businesses and even individual professionals, freelancers, knowledge workers are facing a very similar double squeeze.
The parallels are actually quite striking when you map them out.
Think about it. On one side, from above, we have massive tech giants and highly consolidated corporations owning the absolute premium tier of the economy.
They have infinite resources, endless data, and global reach. You can't beat them on pure scale or pure premium branding.
And on the other side, from below, artificial intelligence is completely gutting the middle of the knowledge economy.
The basic tasks that used to be your low-cost advantage, the sheer hustle and baseline output you use to provide an AI, can do it for fractions of a penny in 3 seconds.
Your old safe haven is gone, just like the cheap labor advantage vanished for Greece in the 90s. The competent baseline output advantage is vanishing for the knowledge worker today.
Exactly. So the question becomes, how do you survive this tearing world?
You can't outcompute the AI on raw, low-cost tasks, and you likely don't have the billions to compete with the tech giants on premium pure technology. You have to find your own hybrid strategy.
You have to operate on both ends of the spectrum simultaneously. You must be highly efficient, but also highly visible.
You cannot afford to just be a quiet hard worker anymore. That is a pure strategy that will get you squeezed out.
So how can you be the cheap and loud in your own career?
How do you maintain an absolute ruthless foundation of efficiency? Maybe by mastering those very AI tools to keep your personal operating costs, your time expenditure, and your busy work near zero, while simultaneously investing heavily in advertising your unique human perspective.
Your personal brand, your empathy, your relationships.
You use the cheap machine to build the foundation, but you use your human voice to be loud and premium.
It's the ultimate modern value for money proposition for an employee or a small business.
Which leaves me with a final lingering question, something to really chew on as you close out this deep dive and go about your day.
What's that?
We've seen that the ultimate survival tactic for an underdog, whether it's a 90s Greek factory fighting globalization or a 2020s professional fighting automation, is to ruthlessly strip out costs behind the scenes while heavily marketing the illusion of premium status to consumers or employers who have shrinking wallets.
The value for money paradigm. It saved them.
Right, but if everyone adopts this strategy, if the only way to survive is to be cheap and loud, does that mean the future of the global middle-class economy is just a race to build the most beautiful, glossy facades over the most bare-bones, hollowed-out machinery?
Wow.
Is value for money actually just brilliant camouflage for an economy that can no longer afford true deep quality? Something for you to mull over?
A fascinating, if slightly dystopian thought to end on, but a very real possibility.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take these lessons, remember, the golden 2x rule. Your strategy is twice as powerful as your environment, and go find your hybrid edge. We'll see you next time.